With EWC being right around the corner, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tournament itself, as well as some of the ROSTERMANIA rumors and how I believe that can impact 100 Thieves. Starting off with EWC, I believe the format is supposed to be the exact same as last season. So if you don't remember, the format was basically there's four pools, and in each pool there's four teams. So to start off, the tournament is kind of like a pool play, but it's also a mini tournament to get into the actual tournament, if that makes sense. Basically, you have to win two matches out of your pool in order to move on. And if you don't, then you do not qualify for the actual tournament itself. So the pool play in some regard is kind of a double elimination, but the actual bracket play is only single elim. So there's only going to be 8 teams that make it from the pool play. And like I said, with there being four pools, 4 teams in each pool, that means you got 16 teams in total. So there's going to be a lot of teams that don't make it just based on the pool play itself. But from there, I want to talk about the pool that the Thieves have. They are in Group B, and they go up against the Vancouver Surge, Gentlemates, and Team Orchid, which is a challengers team. Now, out of all of the groups, I feel like the Thieves have one of probably the better ones when it comes to like their favor. They've kind of had Vancouver's number most of the season. And despite their finish at champs, I feel like they just play really well against Vancouver. So I think when it comes to the teams that are in the actual CDL and who the Thieves face on a day to day basis, I think they have a better chance up against Gentlemates and Vancouver than they would compared to maybe some of the other pools. For example, Group D has the Heretics and Atlanta FaZe. So that's going to be more of a difficult pool, I feel like, because both of those teams have been pretty solid all season and they've had a lot of bang out series against one another. So I think the Thieves are kind of in a pretty solid pool to make it on like to the actual tournament itself. Um, I believe they face off against Gentlemates first, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, odds are they're going to have to beat Gentlemates and Team Orchid in order to move on. There is even a chance that they have to play Vancouver, but it's really only, like I said, whoever wins the first 2 matches or whoever wins 2 matches basically is able to get out. Whether you lose one or not, it doesn't really matter. You just have to win two. So, I think the Thieves should be able to get out of the pool play pretty easily. Like I said, I feel like they faced up against the Surge really well, and Gentlemates has just been pretty underwhelming all year. And they just made a couple changes, if I'm not mistaken, going into EWC. So they're going off of even less reps than what they had before. So I just feel like the Thieves have a really good chance with that. From there, I don't really know where they will land in the actual bracket itself. So I can't really go off of who I think they'll play next. But like I said, it's a single elim. So the Thieves really have to take this seriously. And because of how much pressure I feel like is on the Thieves, we really need to see them perform well. I think that going into Rostermania talks now, I think that there's a chance the Thieves could split after EWC. But the way I think of it is if FaZe wins, I don't see Thieves splitting. And if Thieves win, I don't think they split. So in my mind, the way I look at it is the only way that the Thieves actually split is if somebody other than those 2 teams wins the whole thing. Because I don't see the Thieves making a change for someone unless it's a guaranteed upgrade. And in my mind, you don't want to make a change unless phase players are the guys that you can make a change for, if that makes any sense. Like to me, I think the way the Thieves played this season was way too good. They were 2 rounds away, if I'm not mistaken, 1 round of control and 1 round of S&D from being three-time champions this season. Like they were, like I said, 2 rounds away from winning Major One. They underperformed at Major Two and still finished top four. And then they went back to back in Majors Three and Major Four, as well as winning a minor tournament on top of that. So when you play that good throughout an entire season, yes, I know Champs was very underwhelming, but when you play that well throughout the majority of a season, I just feel like it makes sense to stick. I think their team chemistry is pretty good. I think the problem that they had was mostly getting a little complacent. And ideally, the more you experience like the loss of being complacent, the more you're going to be able to overcome the complacency in the future. So I feel like this team is really good the way they are. I think all the pieces fit together, and I think the only way you make a change is if a guy like Simp is available. And I think for me, I love Envoy. I don't want the Thieves to make a change if they don't need to, which, like I said, I don't think they do. But I also wouldn't be upset if Simp is on the market and the Thieves are able to find a way to get him. So I would understand it. I know people have also mentioned the idea of Celium possibly taking over Ghosty's spot. I don't really like that move. Not because I don't think Celium is a good player. He is arguably the best AR in the league, but Ghosty brings really, really good communication to this team that I think desperately needs good communication. And if you take that away, that now changes the dynamic of the team. And I think people often forget that just because you have star power, just because you have talent, that doesn't necessarily equate to wins. I understand it makes it a lot easier and it makes it a lot more possible, but sometimes you just have to have a good team. It doesn't have to be the biggest names in the game. It just has to be a good team. And I think the Thieves do have a good team. When they're meshing well and they're firing on all cylinders, they are a really, really tough team to beat. And having a full season under their belt with two championships, like I said, being really close to three, and underperforming in certain moments, I think is going to be a really, really good learning experience for the entire team. And I think they're going to come out even hungrier next season to try and, for lack of a better term, take everything. So I just feel like sticking is the right move, but I feel like it is more likely to happen, like I said, if Thieves or FaZe wins EWC, because to me, I don't see anybody else um, being brought into the team. Like to me, like Simp is probably the only guy I would say to make a change for. I feel like outside of him, you probably don't. Now, you could even say maybe there's a world, and this is just me speculating. I don't know. I have no insider information here, but maybe there's a world that since Kenny is on a team like Rocker, if the Thieves were decide to move away from Ghosty as well, maybe they go back to Ken. Maybe they bring Ken on the team. So I I mean, Ken is very vocal. I think that would work in that situation because now you're taking another leader of a team, a vocal player, and you're replacing him, or you're replacing another vocal leader on the team who has more experience and has more time under the Thieves umbrella. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I have no insider information here. I'm just purely speculating on things that I could see happening. I know Kenny has ties to the Thieves, and realistically, I think the last place he wants to be is on a team that is not considered a top echelon team. Like, I could only really see Kenny competing on the likes of, like, at this point, Falcons, maybe Gentlemates, Thieves, Optic, and FaZe. That's pretty much all I see him playing at. Just because that's the type of caliber of player I feel like he is. So I could see a possible reunion in some regard, but again, that's that's if like a lot of things change. If the entire roster mania is really crazy and really wild, then maybe I could see it happening. But I think the most likely thing is going to be that the Thieves stick. I think a lot of people have mentioned the idea that the Thieves should go after a player like Simp if he's free, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think of it as last season. Ben J, for example, was talking about how were the Thieves going to be able to afford this super team. He thought that they were not going to be able to get this roster because it was an expensive roster, and he didn't think the Thieves had the money for it. Obviously, none of us knew the financial situation of the Thieves at all. It was all speculation up until, the moment that this team actually panned out. But My thought process on that is if you're worried about the Thieves couldn't afford this team last season, how in the world are we going to be able to afford a guy like Simp or a guy like Celium on top of Scrap and Hydra and Ghosty or Envoy? Like, it just seems really unlikely that if you thought last season the Thieves couldn't afford these guys, how are we going to be more likely to afford them this season? I'm just not too sure about that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Thieves do have Hydra and, well, I think they have everybody under contract for the rest of the 2026 season or through the 2026 season. So I think it's best to just kind of stick it out. But like I said, if Simp is available, I completely understand trying to make a move for him. My biggest concern is we saw the Thieves do something like that in the past, and it wasn't the same caliber as Simp, but the Thieves made some changes for Hook in the Cold War season, and that just didn't pan out. Like, Hook was a great player. He just won a championship the year prior, and it just didn't pan out the way that the Thieves hoped it would. And I think that's kind of what I'm a little afraid of is making a change. And now, obviously, like all respect to Hook because obviously he's a two-time champion now as well. But like Simp is definitely a better player than Hook overall. So I feel like the consistency wise, you're going to be more likely to get that out of Simp. But still, it just there's that thought in the back of my mind. I like the team we have now. I love Envoy. I think I would love to see him get the chance to kind of be the championship leader when it comes to all the previous Thieves players. Him, Draza, Kenny, and Octane, I believe, are all at not Draza, sorry. I believe Envoy, Octane, and Kenny are all at the same championship total right now. So it would be pretty cool to see Envoy kind of take the lead in that and be looked at as kind of like the new Mr. Thieves, so to speak. But I don't know. That's kind of where I think about it. Like I said, to reiterate, I really don't see the Thieves making a change unless phase splits. I just don't think it would be worth it for the Thieves to change their roster unless you're getting a guaranteed upgrade. Let me know what you guys think though, because I know there's a lot of opinions on this topic. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Maybe even throw out some wild ideas of what you could see happening. I had kind of even joked about it that if Scrap and Hydra were to get bought out or something, how crazy would it be if the Thieves went with Draza, Ghosty, Kenny, and Envoy and basically ran back the Vanguard squad minus Octane, but with a player like Ghosty who is kind of like Octane 2.0. Like, how crazy would that be? Um, Definitely just something I threw out there. Like, I don't actually think that's going to happen. I think Kenny and Envoy not have burned their bridge, but I think there was a lot of like butting heads at the end of the Modern Warfare 2 season when the Thieves split. So I just think it would be unlikely for them to kind of pair that way again. And I think at this point, Kenny really wants to be an AR. So I just don't see that happening. But like I said, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys are excited for EWC and how you think the Thieves are going to do. And let me know who you think the Thieves roster is going to be going into next season. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.